My friends, there comes a moment in every generation when silence becomes more dangerous than speaking out. A moment when pretending not to see, not to hear, not to care, becomes a betrayal of our shared humanity. We are living in that moment right now. Everywhere we look, there are voices being silenced, truths being twisted, and injustices being normalized. And while it's easy to look away, to say, "It's not my problem," the truth is, silence has never protected anyone. It never protected the weak. It never built a nation. It never moved the world forward. Change has always come when people found the courage to speak, not when it was easy, but when it was necessary. We can no longer afford to whisper when the world needs us to roar. Because when we stay silent, the powerful grow louder. When we stay silent, lies begin to sound like truth. And when we stay silent, the future we dream of begins to fade away. But here's the good news: every voice matters. One person's courage can awaken another's. And together, our voices become the heartbeat of progress. So speak up for justice, for truth, for those who cannot. Speak up even when your voice trembles, because history will not remember the comfort of our silence. It will remember the courage of our conviction. Let us choose courage over comfort. Let us choose action over apathy. And let us choose to speak before silence writes our story for us. Silence enables injustice. It is the quiet accomplice of every wrong that goes unchallenged, every cruelty that goes unseen, and every truth that is left unspoken. When we see injustice and choose to look away, we may think we are staying neutral, but neutrality in the face of wrongdoing is not neutrality at all. It is a choice that favors the oppressor. History has shown time and again that silence has never protected the innocent. It only shields those who benefit from the suffering of others. When people remain silent, systems of injustice grow stronger. Discrimination becomes policy. Corruption becomes culture. Violence becomes ordinary. The silence of good people becomes the comfort of the guilty. And slowly, without realizing it, a society begins to accept what once was unacceptable. There is always a cost to speaking up. It may bring criticism, isolation, or even danger, but the cost of silence is far greater. It erodes the moral foundation of our communities. It teaches the next generation that truth is negotiable, and that fear is more powerful than conscience. Silence allows injustice to evolve, to find new disguises, to embed itself deeper into our institutions and our daily lives. Every great injustice, from slavery to segregation, from oppression to inequality, has depended not only on the cruelty of a few, but also on the silence of many. Evil rarely begins with loud voices. It begins with quiet ones, the moments when people said, "It's not my problem," or "Someone else will speak," or "It's just the way things are." Those are the moments that give injustice its permission to grow. To break this cycle, we must understand that silence is not peace. It is the absence of resistance. Peace is built by those who dare to raise their voices, to disrupt, to challenge, to say, "This is not right." The world does not change when the powerful decide it should. It changes when ordinary people decide they can no longer stay silent, when they realize that their words, their courage, their refusal to accept injustice are more powerful than fear itself. Change requires courage. It has always been that way, and it always will be. Every step forward in human history, every freedom won, every injustice overturned, every new beginning forged from the ashes of old mistakes, has been born from the courage of those who dare act when it was neither safe nor popular to do so. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the will to move forward in spite of it. It is the quiet decision made in the stillness of a person's heart that doing what is right matters more than being comfortable, accepted, or unbothered. Change has never arrived by invitation. It has always demanded someone to stand up and say, enough. It begins with the worker who speaks up against unfair treatment, knowing it might cost them their job. It begins with the student who challenges discrimination, even when surrounded by silence. It begins with the citizen who questions authority, not out of disrespect, but out of love for justice. These are not acts of defiance for their own sake. They are acts of faith, faith that a better world is possible and that one voice can make a difference. Courage is not loud. It does not always stand on stages or command attention. Sometimes it is the quiet persistence of those who keep showing up, who keep believing, who keep trying to change what seems unchangeable. Courage is the single mother who demands a better education for her children, the journalist who tells the truth despite threats, the protester who stands alone with a sign when no one else will. It is the belief that integrity is worth the risk, that principles are worth the price. Without courage, nothing moves. Fear becomes the master, and comfort becomes the cage. We tell ourselves that change will come someday, that someone else will lead, that the moment isn't right, and in doing so, we surrender the very power we have to shape the world around us. The truth is, progress only begins when someone refuses to wait any longer, when someone decides that silence and safety are no longer enough. Courage transforms uncertainty into action. It lights the path where none exists. It gives people permission to hope again. And when one person stands, others see that it is possible, and they too begin to rise. That is how change spreads, not through fear or force, but through the contagious power of courage. It is the heartbeat of every revolution, the foundation of every movement, and the spark that turns ordinary people into history makers. Truth must be defended, not because it is always convenient or comfortable, but because without truth, there can be no justice, no trust, and no lasting progress. When truth is ignored or distorted, societies lose their balance. They begin to crumble from within, not because of enemies on the outside, but because of lies that eat away at the soul of a people. Defending truth, therefore, is not just an act of honesty. It is an act of courage, of patriotism, of moral responsibility. In every age, truth has been under attack, sometimes by those in power who fear accountability, sometimes by those who find comfort in denial, and sometimes by the sheer noise of misinformation that drowns out reason and integrity. Lies spread faster than ever before, whispered in back rooms, shared through screens, repeated until they sound like reality. And each time a lie goes unchallenged, it gains strength. It roots itself deeper into public consciousness, and it begins to shape the world in its own image. But truth, though often buried, never dies. It waits for those brave enough to unearth it. It depends on people who refuse to compromise their principles for convenience, who understand that silence in the face of falsehood is a form of surrender. To defend truth is to take a stand against manipulation, to hold up a mirror to power, and to remind the world that facts still matter, that morality still matters. Defending truth is rarely easy. It can cost friendships, careers, even safety. It demands integrity in the face of intimidation, patience in the face of misunderstanding, and resilience when others turn away. Yet history has shown that every great leap forward began with someone telling an uncomfortable truth. The abolition of slavery, the fight for equality, the defense of human rights, all were carried forward by individuals who refused to bend to convenient falsehoods. They spoke truth to power, even when their voices trembled. When truth is defended, light enters dark places. It exposes corruption, dismantles prejudice, and restores hope. But when truth is abandoned, lies fill the vacuum. And once lies become normal, they rewrite everything: history, justice, morality. That is why defending truth is not the job of a few, it is the duty of all. Each time we choose honesty over comfort. Each time we correct a falsehood instead of ignoring it. Each time we stand for what is real, even when others mock or doubt us. We strengthen the foundation upon which freedom stands. A society that values truth is a society that can heal, that can grow, that can face its mistakes and still move forward. Defending truth, then, is not merely an act of resistance. It is an act of preservation, the preservation of conscience, of democracy, of humanity itself. Every voice counts. It is one of the simplest yet most powerful truths we often forget. Throughout history, every great movement, every transformation, every moment that changed course of humanity began with a single voice. One person who decided that staying silent was no longer an option. It doesn't take power, wealth, or position to make a difference. It takes conviction, courage, and the belief that even one voice can echo far beyond its origin. Many people convince themselves that their words do not matter, that their actions are too small to bring change. They think, what difference can I make? But every great story of progress begins with someone who refused to think that way. One voice becomes a ripple becomes a wave, and a wave becomes a tide that moves nations. Change is never sudden. It grows from the steady determination of individuals who speak up when others remain quiet. When one person chooses to speak, others listen. When others listen, they begin to reflect. When they reflect, they begin to act. This is how collective change begins, not in the halls of power, but in the hearts of people who dare to use their voices. The strength of a movement is not measured by how loud it shouts, but by how many voices rise together in harmony for what is right. Each voice, no matter how small, adds depth and truth to that chorus. There are times when fear tells us to stay quiet, to avoid conflict, to stay safe, to blend in. But the world doesn't change when we whisper our beliefs in private. It changes when we have the courage to express them in public. A single sentence of truth, spoken with conviction, can inspire thousands. A single act of defiance can break the silence of a nation. A single story, told with honesty, can remind people that they are not alone. Every voice carries weight because every voice carries experience, the lived reality of someone who sees the world from their own perspective. That diversity of truth is what gives strength to justice. When the young speak, they bring energy. When the old speak, they bring wisdom. When the marginalized speak, they bring truth that has been ignored for too long. Together, these voices form the conscience of a people. Sometimes we underestimate how far our words can travel. A message shared in a room can reach a city. A post online can inspire a movement. A speech can awaken generations. The voice of one person can remind the world of its humanity. That is the quiet power hidden inside each of us, the power to create, to challenge, to inspire, to heal. When people realize that their voice matters, they no longer wait for permission to speak. They stop asking, who will make the change? And start saying, I will. And once that awakening happens, no force in the world can silence it. Every voice counts, because every voice carries the possibility of awakening another until the sound of truth becomes unstoppable. History remembers action. It remembers the moments when people chose to stand rather than sit, to speak rather than remain silent, to act when hesitation was easier. The story of humanity is not written by those who watch from the sidelines. It is written by those who dared to step into the arena, knowing the risks, but believing that the cause was worth it. Words may inspire, but it is action that transforms inspiration into legacy. Throughout time, it has been the brave decisions, not the comfortable conversations, that have shaped our world. The marchers who faced dogs and fire hoses, the leaders who spoke truth to power, the citizens who demanded justice even when the odds were impossible. They are the ones who fill the pages of history. Their courage did not come from certainty, it came from purpose. They understood that history doesn't remember those who simply hope for better days. It remembers those who worked, fought, and sacrificed to create them. Action has a power that thought alone cannot match. Thoughts can fade, intentions can be forgotten. But when a person acts on what they believe, that act becomes a statement, something that cannot be erased. The world watches, learns, and follows. Every generation inherits the consequences of the actions or inactions of the ones before it. If our predecessors had waited for perfect timing, for total safety, for universal agreement, progress would have never arrived. Taking action does not always mean leading a movement or changing laws. Sometimes it is the smaller, quieter acts, helping a neighbor standing up to a cruel remark, telling the truth when it would be easier to lie. These are the seeds from which greater change grows. History remembers these moments too, because they form the moral foundation of society. Every act of courage, however small, joins a long line of human effort to build something better. There is a temptation in our time to confuse awareness with action, to believe that knowing about a problem, posting about it, or discussing it is enough. Awareness is only the beginning. It shines a light, but action is what builds the road forward. History will not remember how many people knew what was wrong. It will remember who did something about it. Knowledge without movement becomes stagnation. But when knowledge drives people to act, it becomes power. Those who take action often face criticism, misunderstanding, and failure. Yet even in failure, there is meaning. Because action, unlike inaction, moves the story forward. It teaches lessons, awakens others, and proves that courage is not about succeeding. It's about trying when it would be easier not to. Every great leader, every reformer, every ordinary citizen who changed something in their world began with that single choice to do something rather than nothing. And that is what endures. Decades and centuries later, it is not the names of those who doubted or delayed that we celebrate. It is the names of those who moved, who took their beliefs off the page and into the world. History does not stand still, and neither should we. What we do or fail to do will define how we are remembered, and more importantly, what kind of world we leave behind. Courage is contagious. It spreads quietly at first, like a spark in dry grass, invisible until suddenly it becomes a fire that no force can extinguish. One person's decision to act bravely can awaken courage in others who never knew they had it. The strength of one voice can embolden another, and before long, what began as a single act of defiance becomes a chorus of determination. History proves that when one individual stands firm in truth, countless others find the strength to stand beside them. Courage has a language that transcends fear. When people see someone confront injustice, when they witness a person refuse to bow to intimidation, something stirs deep inside them. It reminds them that they too have a choice, that they too possess the same power to resist, to speak, to act. Courage, unlike fear, invites participation. It tells others you are not alone. It shows that bravery is not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let fear dictate your actions. Think of the moments in history when one individual's courage changed everything. A lone protester standing before a line of tanks, a young student refusing to accept discrimination, a journalist writing the truth despite threats. Those moments ripple outward. They travel through communities, across borders, through generations. Each act becomes a symbol that whispers to others, if they can, so can I. Courage gives permission for others to be bold. It breaks the illusion that fear is unbeatable. Fear thrives in isolation. It convinces people that they are powerless, that their actions will not matter, that speaking up will only bring trouble. But when one person finds the courage to defy that fear, the illusion collapses. Others begin to see that courage is not reserved for heroes. It is something that lives in everyone, waiting to be awakened. The courage of one becomes the confidence of many. The bravery of a few becomes the movement of a generation. Courage spreads not only through great acts, but through everyday choices. A teacher defending a student, a worker refusing to tolerate corruption, a neighbor standing up against cruelty. Each of these actions, small as they may seem, tells others that goodness is not alone in the world. People watch these moments, they feel their power, and they begin to find that same strength within themselves. This is how societies change, not because a single hero leads the way, but because countless ordinary people find the courage to rise together. When courage spreads, fear loses its grip. It no longer defines what people can or cannot do. Communities grow stronger, voices grow louder, and movements grow unstoppable. That is the beautiful paradox of courage. It begins in one heart, but ends up belonging to everyone. It reminds us that bravery is not something we are born with. It is something we build together, moment by moment, choice by choice, until it becomes a force greater than fear itself. So now the question before us is simple, but it is not easy. Will we stay silent and watch the world drift further from the truth, or will we rise, each in our own way, to defend what is right, even when it costs us something? The world does not change because someone else decides it should. It changes when you decide that your voice, your courage, your action matters. Each of us holds a piece of the world's future in our hands. The choice we make to speak or to stay silent, to act or to look away, will shape not only our own lives, but the lives of those who come after us. So let us be the generation that chose courage over comfort, the generation that believed in truth even when it was inconvenient, the generation that understood that silence was never peace. It was only the pause before change. Let us raise our voices not in anger, but in purpose, not to divide, but to build, not to shout for attention, but to speak for justice. Because when we do, when we stand together, when we speak with courage, conviction, and compassion, there is nothing we cannot change. And one day, when history looks back, it will remember not our fear, not our hesitation, but our choice to act when it mattered most.